Last episode, I told you why segregation exists. Violence, disorder, staff assault, dirty protest, and yes, more often than not, that door has to shut. But here's the part that prisons do not advertise. Once that door exists, it doesn't only shut on the violent. It can shut on the mentally unwell, overwhelmed, and the prisoners the system has basically no better answer for. And this is where segregation stops looking like safety and starts looking like something else. Because sometimes segregation is not the solution, it's where the problem gets moved. Let me be clear from the start. I am not saying segregation should not exist. If somebody's seriously violent, assaulting staff, assaulting other prisoners, throwing fluids, destroying cells, or making a wing unsafe, prisons do need a way to separate that risk. That part is very, very real, trust me. But the problem starts when the same unit built for those extreme situations starts taking in people for completely different reasons. Not just for danger, but mental health, conflict, pressure, overwhelmed, prisoners who just can't cope, prisons that system cannot place, and prisoners nobody seems to have a proper answer for. And this is when segregation becomes more than just a safety measure. It just becomes sort of holding space for problems the prison cannot resolve properly. That does not always happen because the governors or officers are cruel. Sometimes it happens because staff are stretched. Sometimes because the wing is under pressure. Sometimes because mental health support is very, very limited. Sometimes because there is nowhere else to put somebody. Sometimes because the prison needs calm immediately. And seg is the fastest way to do it. But fast doesn't always mean right. And that's the uncomfortable truth here. Segregation can absolutely restore order very quickly, but it doesn't mean fixing what caused the disorder in the first place. And this is where public often gets it wrong. People hear segregation and imagine one type of prisoner. Very bad behaviour, locked away, and that's the end of story. But prison reality is way messier than that, because the same door can shut on someone violent and someone who's literally just falling apart. And one of the clearest signs of that is this. Some prisoners would rather be in segregation than on a normal wing. Not because seg is nice, it really isn't. Not because it's comfortable, because it isn't. Not because it's some kind of easier ride, it really isn't. But because the general population can feel worse. You've got debt, you've got bullying, threats, pressure, the noise, conflict, paranoia and overstimulation. Imagine that for some prisoners, segregation feels like the only way to get space, force a move, or escape a situation they cannot handle. And that should alarm people all by itself. Because if somebody prefers segregation to a normal wing, something has already gone badly wrong somewhere else. And then there is the isolation itself. Because segregation does not just move a body, it changes the environment around that person completely. So they get less contact, less stimulation, less movement, less normality. And for some prisoners, that does not calm things down. It makes them worse. It gets them more anger, more hopelessness, more rumination, more instability. Because you cannot isolate distress and expect it to come out improved. Because once segregation starts being used for too many different kinds of problems, the line blurs between safety and convenience, between managing a genuine risk and burying behind a door. And seg is not some easy environment for staff either. It is one of the most pressured places in the jail. Volatility, filth, threats, mental health crises, constant tension. So when the segregation gets overused, it does not just affect the prisoners inside it. It puts pressure on the staff expected to hold the whole environment together too. So no, this is not just me saying every use of seg is wrong. And it is not me pretending prisons can function without somewhere to separate serious risk. They can't. What I am saying though is this. A unit built for most serious situation becomes dangerous when it starts absorbing everything else. That is the real warning sign, not the existence and meaning of segregation, but the reliance on it. Because once isolation starts becoming normal, prisons stop treating it like an emergency measure and start treating it like just part of furniture. And once that happens, the system stops asking the right questions, like, is this actually solving anything? That is the real issue, not just why seg exists, but what it becomes when prisons start leaning on it too easily. Next episode, I'm taking this to the very far end of prison separation. Robert Maudsley, the prisoner kept apart for decades in a glass cell, being one of the most extreme cases Britain has ever seen. I'm presuming everyone's seen Silence of the Lambs and the Red Dragon. Do you remember the glass cage Hannibal Lecter was placed in? That's exactly the condition Robert Maudsley is currently, right now, being kept in. But really not because he's the most dangerous person in Britain. So yes, absolutely, segregation can start as safety, but it does not always stay there. And before we wrap this up, hi, my name is Dagna and I was a prison officer in the UK for 6 years. I've stood on the inside of the system and I've seen what the headlines miss. So this is Inside Our Justice, where we say the quiet parts out loud.